My sister-in-law announced her pregnancy at my anniversary party. Now her husband is leaving her, and she's desperate for my help. I'm 27, and for a while now, I've been struggling to conceive. My husband and I have been trying for almost 8 months, but so far, no luck. We've finally decided it's time to get fertility tests done in the next few weeks. Up until now, we've put it off, mostly out of nerves, but we both know we can't keep avoiding it forever. We've been together for 6 years, married for 3, and more than anything, I want to be a mother. Anyone who knows me knows that my biggest dream has always been to have a family of my own. My husband feels the same way, and starting a family just seemed like the natural next step for us. But for some reason, it just isn't happening, and honestly, it's frustrating. We've tried everything we can, medications, home remedies, you name it, but nothing's worked so far. The past couple of months have been rough on both of us, and with all the stress piling up, we figured we needed a break. So, to celebrate our wedding anniversary a few days ago, we threw a big party, really went all out, hoping it would help take our minds off everything. But instead of lifting our spirits, the whole thing completely backfired, and I have my dear sister-in-law, Jenny, to thank for that. Now, a little about Jenny. She's 25, just got married a few months back to her longtime boyfriend, and had the kind of big, extravagant wedding she always wanted. She's a bit of a show-off, always carries herself like she's got things figured out better than the rest of us, but I've never had an issue with her. In fact, I've never had a problem with anyone in my husband's family. This is actually the first time there's been any tension between us, and to be honest, it feels strange and uncomfortable. Jenny and I were never super close, but we always got along fine, at least until what happened at my anniversary party. Now, I don't think I can look at her, or even my in-laws, the same way again. For some context, my husband's family had no idea that we were trying for a baby. We had considered telling them, but after a couple of months of nothing but disappointment, we decided to keep it to ourselves until we had good news to share. My parents didn't know either, so it seemed fair. A few of my friends were aware, but they had their own lives to deal with, so I didn't really turn to them for advice. I didn't want to burden them with my struggles. Then, about 4 or 5 days ago, Jenny and her husband came over to visit. At one point, my husband and Jenny's husband stepped outside to check on the sprinklers. I had mentioned they needed fixing, and since her husband's pretty handy, he offered to take a look. That left me and Jenny alone in the living room. I tried to keep the conversation light, but she cut straight to the point and asked me what was wrong. She said it was obvious that something was bothering me and wanted me to open up. At first, I brushed it off, but she kept pressing. I guess I hadn't been doing a great job of hiding how upset I was, especially after yet another negative pregnancy test the day before. Eventually, I gave in and told her the truth. My husband and I had agreed not to share this with anyone until we had something positive to say, but I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I was already feeling emotional and overwhelmed, and I needed to get it off my chest. I couldn't talk to my husband about it too much because he was struggling just as much as I was, and constantly bringing it up would only make things harder on both of us. So, when Jenny asked, I just spilled everything. I told her we'd been trying to have a baby but weren't having any luck. I didn't think twice about it. I just needed to talk to someone. At the time, she seemed genuinely happy for me, even hugged me, saying she was so excited at the idea of having a niece or nephew. But when I mentioned how long we had been struggling and how much it was getting to us, she suddenly turned sympathetic. She even offered to take me to a fertility specialist she knew. I thanked her for her concern, but that wasn't what I needed. I just needed someone to listen. And honestly, in that moment, it felt nice. It was a real conversation, one where she actually seemed to understand what I was going through. By the time our husbands came back inside and we had to drop the topic, I felt lighter, like I had finally let out something that had been weighing me down. When she left, she hugged me again, which she doesn't usually do, and for the first time, it felt like maybe we were becoming real friends. For the next couple of days, we didn't talk, but then she came over for our anniversary party 2 days ago. When she arrived, she was warm and friendly, hugged me again, handed me a gift, and everything seemed normal. I really thought we were on good terms, like things had shifted between us in a good way. But that didn't last long. My husband and I had invited a lot of people to the party, family, friends, everyone we cared about. It was actually helping us take our minds off things for a bit. We were chatting, laughing, just enjoying the night. But about an hour into the party, Jenny and her husband stepped into the center of the room and announced they had something to share. My husband and I exchanged confused looks, and in that moment, my stomach dropped. I had this awful feeling she was about to say something about me, about what I had told her in confidence just a few days ago. But it was worse than that. Once the room quieted down, her husband beamed and proudly announced that they had just found out they were pregnant just a week ago, in fact, and that in 9 months, they would be parents. The whole room erupted in cheers and applause. My husband's family rushed up to them, hugging them, congratulating them. And I just stood there, frozen. Before I even realized what was happening, tears started spilling down my face. I didn't want to make a scene, so I turned and bolted for the restroom. My husband noticed and followed me, but I locked the door before he could come in. I just needed a few minutes to pull myself together, to breathe, to process what I had just heard. He stood outside, trying to comfort me through the door, telling me that everything would be okay, that it would happen for us eventually. But in that moment, all I could do was sit there and try to make sense of the whirlwind of emotions hitting me all at once. At that moment, my husband reassured me that everything would work out eventually, it was just taking time. And even if it never happened for us naturally, we'd be okay. We had other options, and no matter what, we'd face it together. Hearing him say that made me feel a little better, so I finally unlocked the door and let him in. Once he was inside, I told him that Jenny already knew about our struggles. But he didn't react much, he just said we could talk about that later. Right then, his only concern was whether I was okay, and everything else could wait. So, we just stood there in silence, holding each other. And honestly, that was all I needed to pull myself out of the initial shock. By the time we stepped back into the living room, the excitement over Jenny's announcement had died down, and people had moved on to other conversations. Apparently, everyone had been looking for us, so the moment we reappeared, all eyes turned to us. Not exactly ideal, considering I had just been crying my eyes out. I had done my best to fix my face, but my mascara had smudged like crazy, and there was no hiding the fact that I had been upset. As soon as people saw me, they started asking if I was alright, their concern written all over their faces. I knew I wasn't fooling anyone, but I had to say something, so I just brushed it off, saying I'd felt a little overwhelmed and needed to step away for a bit. It was a weak excuse, but it was the best I could come up with to stop them from pressing any further. Once my husband and I had settled back into the party, we even made it a point to walk up to Jenny and her husband to congratulate them. She looked a little off, almost like she was upset about something, but she didn't say a word. We just smiled, exchanged a few words, and moved on. It wasn't easy, but I think my husband and I handled the whole situation with as much dignity and grace as we could. Even though I had been overwhelmed with emotion in the middle of the party, I didn't let it ruin the night. I refused to let it take away from what was supposed to be a celebration of our marriage. We didn't bring up the topic again until after all the guests had left, and we were finally in bed. That's when I told my husband everything. I admitted that I had confided in Jenny about us trying to conceive when she had visited, and because of that, I found it incredibly insensitive of her to announce her pregnancy at our anniversary party. She knew we were struggling, she knew we had been trying to distract ourselves from it, and yet, she still chose that moment to make it all about her. To my relief, my husband agreed. He said that even if she hadn't known about our difficulties, she still should have had enough common sense to realize that an anniversary party wasn't the right place for that kind of announcement. It was a night meant to celebrate us, and making it about herself without even giving us a heads up was just tacky. And then, something clicked. While we were talking, we realized that when Jenny had consoled me the other day when she was acting all understanding and sympathetic, she already knew she was pregnant. She and her husband had found out a full week before the party. That meant she had sat there, listening to me pour my heart out, knowing the entire time that she was going to drop this bombshell at my event. It wasn't a coincidence. It was deliberate. But why? That's the part we couldn't figure out. As far as I knew, Jenny and I weren't best friends, but we weren't enemies either. We had always been cordial, never had any bad blood, so why would she go out of her way to hurt me like that? My husband and I decided that we needed to confront her. We knew that the conversation could go one of two ways, either she would apologize, and we could clear the air, or we'd have no choice but to cut ties with her. So yesterday, we made a plan to call her after work and talk things out. But before we could reach out to her, my husband's parents called us first. They told us to come over for a family meeting, saying it was urgent. That didn't sound good. Since they made it sound so serious, we decided to take the day off and head over. The moment we walked in, I could tell something was off. The entire family was already there, his parents, his grandmother, Jenny, and her husband. The atmosphere was heavy, and the way they all stared at us made me feel like I was stepping into a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided against us. Jenny wouldn't even look at us. At first, I thought it was strange, but it all started making sense once my in-laws started talking. Right away, they brought up the party. They said they had noticed that my husband and I were the only people who left the room after Jenny's announcement and didn't come back for a long time. They also pointed out that even when I did congratulate Jenny and her husband, it didn't seem genuine enough. I sat there, listening to them, realizing that they weren't just mentioning this, they were accusing me of something. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool, and calmly explained why I had reacted the way I did. My husband and I told them the truth, that we had been trying to have a baby for a long time with no success, and it had been weighing on us. The anniversary party was meant to be an escape from all of that, a night where we didn't have to think about pregnancy for once. But Jenny's announcement had shattered that. Everything we had been trying to push aside came rushing back, and I got overwhelmed. I started crying and didn't want to break down in front of everyone, so I left. I thought that explanation was more than reasonable. I thought they'd understand. But instead of showing even a shred of empathy, they just sat there in silence. My husband and I actually started to believe that they might say something supportive about our decision to start a family. Maybe even ask questions, show some interest. But no. They completely ignored that part and went right back to focusing on Jenny. Then, his mother spoke up. She said that while she understood that I was upset, I was an adult, and I needed to learn how to control my emotions. According to her, my behavior at the party was unacceptable. I was stunned. I had done everything in my power to keep it together that night. Despite how much I had been hurting, I had still congratulated Jenny and her husband, smiled through the pain, and continued the evening as gracefully as I could. And yet, somehow, I was still the villain in their eyes. I couldn't believe it. I thought we had handled the situation as well as we could, but apparently, that wasn't enough. My husband and I argued with his family, insisting that we hadn't done anything wrong. In fact, we pointed out that most people in our shoes would have reacted way worse. Some might have even kicked Jenny and her husband out of the party for hijacking our anniversary to make it about themselves. I also made it clear that Jenny had known about our struggles before the party. Despite that, she had still chosen to make her big announcement, fully aware of what we were going through. If anyone needed to be held accountable, it was her, not us. She was the one who made that choice, and she did it in a place where it was completely inappropriate. That's when things really spiraled. Jenny jumped into the argument, flipping the script and painting herself as the victim. She claimed that she had only made the announcement in hopes of making us feel better, as if knowing she was pregnant would somehow reassure us that we'd get there too. It was a ridiculous excuse, but she clung to it. Her parents immediately jumped to her defense, insisting that she had just been trying to be nice and that we were the ones who had overreacted. According to them, we needed to suck it up and apologize. The shouting got worse from there. At one point, my mother-in-law actually screamed at me, accusing me of ruining Jenny's big moment on purpose because I was jealous of her. She claimed I had thrown a temper tantrum and made a scene just to steal attention and sympathy from everyone at the party. That was the final straw. My husband was just as furious as I was. He told them that if that's truly what they thought of me, if they really believed I was some petty, jealous person who would sabotage someone else's happiness, then maybe it was best if we cut ties with them completely. And with that, we walked out. Even after we got home, we were still talking about everything they had said. The sheer audacity of it all was unbelievable. Jenny had deliberately ruined our special day, and somehow, she had the nerve to act like we were the ones in the wrong. We figured we wouldn't hear from any of them for at least a few days, but then, out of nowhere, Jenny sent my husband a message. In it, she said she was hurt and disappointed by how we were treating her. She claimed she had only made the announcement to spread happiness and never meant to make us feel bad. Then, she threw in the most absurd excuse of all. She said she didn't think I would react the way I did or start crying just because she was pregnant. As if that wasn't enough, she doubled down and basically admitted she agreed with her mother. She said I had stolen her thunder because, in her words, anniversaries happen every year, but she could only announce her first pregnancy once. She believed I should have been happy for her, tried to understand her perspective, and not been so self-involved that I let my own struggles cloud my reaction. I honestly don't even know how to process that level of entitlement. So now, I want to ask, was I really in the wrong for crying and stepping away when my sister-in-law announced her pregnancy at my anniversary party? Update 1. First, I just want to thank everyone who commented and reached out with support. Reading the experiences of other women who have struggled with infertility has really helped me feel less alone. I know now that I'm not the only one going through this, and that brings a strange kind of comfort. Motherhood is a beautiful thing, and no matter how it happens, whether I get pregnant, choose surrogacy, or adopt, our child will be loved beyond measure. That's all that really matters in the end. My husband and I are actually going in for our fertility tests tomorrow, so hopefully, we'll finally have some answers. Wish us luck. As for the situation with my in-laws, nothing has changed. But thanks to all the comments, my husband and I now know for sure that we were not in the wrong here. We have nothing to apologize for. If they want to have a relationship with us moving forward, then Jenny is going to have to apologize and take full accountability for what she did. Personally, I think all of them owe us an apology. The way they ganged up on us at that so-called family meeting was beyond awful. They had no right to accuse me of being jealous or to make me feel like I had done something wrong when I was the victim in all of this. Even now, just thinking about it makes me want to call them up and tell them exactly what I think. But so far, it's been 2 days, and we haven't heard a word from them. I get the feeling they're waiting for us to reach out first, but that's not happening. I wasn't exactly surprised by Jenny's behavior. She's always had that self-centered streak, but I never expected my in-laws to be just as entitled and delusional as her. My husband feels the same way. In fact, he's still in shock over how his parents acted. They've never treated him differently from Jenny before, so this sudden shift, where they're siding with her no matter what, doesn't make any sense to him. Personally, I think they were mostly mad because my husband chose to comfort me instead of rushing to congratulate Jenny. That's probably what set them off. But that's just a theory. A lot of people have also been asking how my parents feel about all of this. Honestly, they didn't have much to say. Unlike my husband's family, I've never been particularly close to mine. They did say that what Jenny did was wrong and offered their sympathies, but beyond that, they weren't really involved. I told them everything the day after the party, mainly because they called to ask why I had been crying after Jenny's announcement. They consoled me for a bit and assured me they were there for me, but I knew it was just something they were saying. They were too caught up with work to actually be there for me, which has always been the case. I don't hold it against them, it's just how it's always been. They love me, and I love them, but we've never been the kind of family that acts like one when it really matters. That's part of the reason why I want to be a mother so badly. I want to do it right. I want to build the kind of family I never had growing up. I used to feel hurt about it, but now? I've made peace with it. Final update. Jenny reached out to my husband today. He was at work when she called, so he couldn't answer, but she left him a text saying she needed to talk to him. It was an emergency. She told him she'd be waiting near his workplace and asked if they could grab a coffee after he got off. Thankfully, my husband was smart enough to forward me the message. So when his workday ended, I drove over to meet him. When he called me, I met him outside, and together, we headed to the coffee shop where Jenny was waiting. She had specifically told him she wanted to talk to him alone, so it was clear she wasn't thrilled to see me. But to her credit, she didn't say anything about it. We sat down, ordered coffee, and then waited. My husband and I had already agreed that we weren't going to start the conversation. She was the one who had called us there, so it was her job to speak first. It was awkward. No one said a word for 5 whole minutes. Finally, with an exasperated sigh, Jenny caved. She muttered an apology for what happened, though she didn't sound the least bit sincere. Not that it mattered, she barely even paused before moving on, like she didn't expect us to acknowledge or accept it. Instead, she launched into a whole story about what had been going on behind the scenes. Apparently, after our big fight with her and her parents, her husband finally put the pieces together. Up until that point, he had genuinely believed that Jenny had already asked for my permission before making the pregnancy announcement at our anniversary party because that's what she had told him. But after watching the argument unfold, he realized she had been lying the whole time. Turns out, her husband was the only person in that room who actually had a spine. He was the only one who saw the situation for what it was, an entire family gaslighting the victims into thinking they were the villains. When they got home, he confronted her about it. He flat out asked if she had lied to him, and since he already knew the truth by then, she had no choice but to admit it. She told him that, no, she hadn't actually asked for my permission. She had assumed it wouldn't be an issue because, in her mind, her announcement was supposed to bring joy to everyone. She claimed she hadn't anticipated that it would make me cry. But her husband wasn't buying it. He called her out immediately. He reminded her that she had known, before the party, that I was struggling to conceive. There was no way she could have truly believed that her announcement, made in that setting, would bring me happiness. They fought. And that's when her husband said what we had known all along: Jenny had done it on purpose. She had made the announcement at our party specifically to rub it in my face. She had lied to him about having my consent because she knew he wouldn't have been okay with it otherwise. She had manipulated everyone, made herself out to be the victim, and had taken it way too far. Hearing her admit all of this, finally hearing the truth come out of her mouth, was so satisfying. But that's not why she had called us there. No, Jenny had come to beg for our forgiveness. Her husband had left. The moment he realized the full extent of what she had done, he walked out. He hadn't returned since. She had been trying to contact him non-stop, but he wasn't answering her calls. He had made it very clear he wasn't going to speak to her or even consider forgiving her until we did. And so, she came crawling to us. She was desperate for us to tell her husband that everything was fine now, that we had forgiven her, that we had moved on, that she wasn't a terrible person. And honestly, We weren't proud of what we did next, but I won't lie, it was necessary. We laughed, right in her face. We told her she had earned this. She had intentionally hurt us when we were at our most vulnerable, and now she was finally facing the consequences of her own actions. We weren't about to hand her an easy way out. We weren't going to accept an apology she didn't even mean. Then, my husband hit her with the harshest truth yet. He told her that, in his opinion, her husband was right to leave. He told her that someone as cruel and heartless as her had no business being a mother. She tried to play the victim again, breaking down in tears. But it didn't work. Because where was all this concern for emotions when I was crying at my own party? Where was all this sensitivity when she and her family were attacking us in that so-called family meeting? We didn't owe her anything. We walked out of that coffee shop and never looked back. I don't know what's going to happen to her now. But if you ask me, I hope her husband divorces her and wins full custody of that child. Trust me, that would be the best possible outcome for that baby. Final update. Hey, everyone. I forgot to mention this in my last update, but we did get our test results back. Neither my husband nor I have any underlying fertility issues. It's just going to take time. That was a huge relief because, honestly, I had started to believe something was wrong. So, we're going to keep trying, but with a different mindset now. We'll try not to let the stress get to us so much. This journey is supposed to be a joyful one, not a painful one. Maybe that was part of the problem in the beginning. We were putting too much pressure on ourselves. As for Jenny and her husband, they are getting divorced. From what I've heard, they already had problems before all of this, and this was just the final nail in the coffin. He's filing for full custody, which honestly makes sense. Her parents, of course, are blaming me. In their eyes, I'm somehow responsible for everything that's happened. But my husband and I have completely cut ties with them. We've blocked them everywhere, so they have no way of reaching us anymore. We also made it very clear to the rest of my husband's extended family that we will not be attending any events where Jenny or her parents will be present. And to our surprise, most of them actually agreed with us. They told us they'd invite us instead of them, because apparently, Jenny's behavior didn't sit well with a lot of people. I should feel bad for them. But I don't. They did this to themselves. And now, they're finally facing the consequences.